All right, folks, this is Acid Root. So I'm going to review kind of a bootleg project. Now, I've never really reviewed bootleg albums before. This is kind of a mixtape, kind of a bootleg, kind of an album. It was for sale. It did hit retail, but I don't know how much Eminem himself wants you to have this. But I feel like reviewing Eminem's 2003 bootleg mixtape straight from the lab. Now this is vintage Eminem right here. I just have to say right off the bat, a lot of the complaints that people have nowadays about Eminem are just nowhere to be found on this brief project. And really, really like the main thing about it. This is Eminem between 2001 and 2003, which is basically his prime years. Not all of them, but a good chunk of them. Really, Eminem was cresting off of Devil's Night and the Eminem Show around that time. Plus, he found 50 Cent. Obi Trice didn't hurt, and D12 are kind of vicious depending upon the song they were on. So that was a lot of stuff that was kind of going on around that time that made Eminem quite the volatile musician. And so, of course, something that didn't hurt either was getting into beefs with the Source manager or whatever he was. I think he made the Source. I don't remember. He was like the high editor of the Source, but Benzino and then Ja Rule and Cannabis. There's some diss records on this release, and this is basically about the only place you can find them that you can actually purchase them. So otherwise, you're just going to have to let them float around on YouTube and decide what you want to do with them from there. The thing I don't like about YouTube only music is just the fact that you don't ever know when it's okay to actually download it just due to piracy and stuff. So you have to kind of make that choice yourself. But the fact of the matter is Eminem did pay money for these instrumentals and stuff. So, but anyhow, it's just a mess as far as trying to get them if you actually want to physically own them. And this is about one of the few ways I can think to own some of his better diss records, and just basically kind of in between the Eminem Show record and Encore, which is just some good stuff because he was basically in his prime in 2003, and that was kind of the thing. I wish he would have been on more records on 50 Cent's Get Rich or Die Trying and had at least dropped like an EP or something in 2003, because that was where he really had some prime stuff and was just annihilating all records that he got on and was just virtually flawless damn near during that particular time period. So that's kind of where that came from. So yeah, it was just good. I think you can tell this project's going to get a high score. So there's no singles off this project. I'm just going to go ahead and list these records on here. Monkey See, Monkey Do. All of these have good production. All right, so a lot of these records have fantastic production on them, and they just have good direction that they kind of went in. There are some diss records on here, 3 diss records on straight from the lab, but like I was saying, Monkey See, Monkey Do feels like a really good club song from Eminem, kind of felt like an Eminem Show leftover, and that's definitely a good thing considering how difficult. I mean, Eminem Show was so compact, kind of paying attention to the fact that it just made sense that he probably made more than 15 songs like supposedly he did for the Eminem Show. So getting any sort of leftover from that sort of time period from like 2001 to 2002 or so, or even 2003, was definitely a good thing. We Are Americans and Love You More both wound up being on Encore, and I like We Are Americans just because that really like I said, all of these songs are pretty lyrical and they're not too much to deal with. They have like the right pace and pulse, and Eminem is just on point on some of these. So that's really the good thing there. Love You More is kind of more of like a dramatic song, kind of similar to like Love You More is kind of like more like the kind of romantic type songs in Eminem's sense. I mean, he kind of did that on Marshall Mathers LP and Eminem Show, but it made sense that this kind of record kind of took place is because it was a lot of fun. And then Can I Bitch was a diss track towards Cannabis, which had a real slinky beat that reminded me of like Square Dance and Business off of the Eminem Show. He nailed that song pretty well. And then Bully was probably the best song on here, I would have thought. I mean, I just felt like the hook was fantastic on Bully. Eminem's lyrics, just the way he did the verses, and he could have just rapped it, but he kind of had a melody in the verses while he did it. So that was kind of something. And then there was Come On In, which is also known as 6 in the Morning off of D12 World. So the thing about D12 World is just the fact that when you pay attention to it, that actually was Eminem, what he was up to in 2003. Despite the fact that he wasn't on every single song, it still kind of was pseudo Eminem in 2003 and a little bit of 2004 also. But it's a decent song. I like Eminem's verse on there. I mean, D12 kind of did it, but I mean that's the kind of the atmosphere is. For some reason, it just felt like D12 packed more punch on Devil's Night. I don't know what it was about it. I mean, Eminem kind of got more lackadaisical and more kind of funny and goofier like during the Encore and D12 World days, but so did D12. I don't know how many people denote that these days, but D12 kind of got more campy and kind of sarcastic with their lyrics, but they had more attitude on Devil's Night, and it seemed like they were more lyrical, but that's kind of the thing there. And then Haley's Revenge doesn't have Eminem. He's really just in like the intro. He just kind of does like the opening lines, and like he just is in like the ad libs and that sort of stuff. So D12 and really not all of D12. I don't think Bizarre is on this song, and then Obi Trice is on here also. So it's just basically a diss record towards Ja Rule. This really never got unearthed and put on any project. It's decent, but I felt like Eminem probably could have annihilated him better. I mean, Eminem had the best diss record on this whole project with Bully, but Haley's Revenge did decent just because D12 kind of handled it and they took care of Eminem's problems for him. But I mean, honestly, it's notable. It's kind of like how I felt like so many people will say like Tupac's "Hit 'Em Up" was one of the best diss songs ever, but I mean, really, Tupac only laid down 2 verses on there, and really, the Outlaws did okay, but they weren't quite as venomous as Tupac, and that's kind of the same thing with D12. They just were mainly just backing up Eminem more so. I mean, I don't want to say that Ja Rule could have taken D12, but it would have been more evenly matched. I think definitely that's kind of the thing there, because Ja Rule actually had a better career than D12. So that's kind of the situation. That's how you have to look at it. But so yeah, all those songs in there, basically the first 3 songs are just like Eminem show leftovers, and then Come On In is another one that also is kind of just Eminem in 2003, which should be a bullseye if you like that particular style. But this record is going to get a 10 out of 10 just because of how effective it wound up being, and just Eminem in his prime. That's the best way I can describe it, is this Eminem in his prime. Vicious lyrics, vicious hooks, good production, fun guests on here, just fun. He just had a hodgepodge of a time. The only real weakness to this project is just the fact that it's bootleg. I mean, that's the only problem with it, is it almost feels like if you were to buy this record somewhere and you were to see it out there, if Eminem would actually give the approval to say, yeah, go ahead and buy it, because he's pretty particular about that. Jackal Goldkick and I have talked about before how Eminem doesn't really like his unreleased music being out there, but this is just too good to just ignore and not pay attention to. I definitely felt like Eminem needed something out there in 2003. This is as close as we got, but this is living proof that the stuff he did in late 2002, 2003 and such was just venomous. That's just the thing about it. So it gets a 10. The social score, I don't know. I mean, I guess I could give it a 10 also just because it's Eminem and he was at his height back then. This really happens to be the thing. So yeah, just perfect 10s. This is, I mean, if you don't like this, I don't know. I mean, I just would have to say you need to kind of mess with this record just because it's Slim Shady in his prime, and it also in some cases is D12 in their prime. So that's kind of the thing.